Yes, have some.
Hey, welcome to Zero Hit Points, everybody. It's May 1st, summer of Soul. Matthew Amber.
What is happening to you?
Should we do that one again?
No, go with it. I mean, I'm fine here. You're wearing like a football. Like, are you a goalie today?
You don't like my shirt from high school?
Were you a goalie then? You look like you should be on the pitch getting ready to stop a couple of soccer balls.
I don't even know why I bought this thing in high school. I mean, it's long sleeve, so normal people don't wear these shirts. Are we recording the podcast? I don't even know at this point.
Welcome to Fashion Hit Points.
Welcome to Zero Hit Points, everybody. It's May 1st. I'm Ryan Miller, etc.
It's zero fashion points.
Zero fascist points?
Yes, we don't have any of those.
That's true.
We are
also
currently at an anti-fascism level.
We have a lot of nothing. There are a lot of things in the world that rate as zeros when it comes to us.
Yeah, like hit points.
First and foremost, I'm Ryan Miller. If I haven't said that yet, there's no way to tell at this point what it's going to be.
Yeah, okay, here we go. Let's do it one more time.
May 1st, I introduce Matt Amber.
May 1st?
Yeah,
because it's the date.
And the introduction.
Yeah.
Efficient. Lean.
That's what we're aiming for with every show. Does it happen? Not usually, because like us, we overeat, we get way too bloated.
So overeat with us in video game form when we talk about games we've played, games we might play, games other people have played. There's honestly no rules.
It is a lawless Wild West that we play in this podcast realm. It is. It's totally lawless.
It's a Westworld of our own creation.
You know, these violent delights have violent ends.
With zero Yulebrenner points.
Yeah, sad lack of Yulebrenner due to death.
Have you watched that would probably belong in the movie.
Yeah, don't ever talk to me about anything entertainment-wise outside of video games or video game movies.
Do they at least reference Yulebrenner at some point?
No. Well, kind of. The
not even his character, just the guy.
No, not that I know of, but they have referenced it. They referenced the character because ostensibly Ed Harris is that character, kind of.
So tune in Thursdays when we watch a movie, not even TV, and talk about it.
Yeah.
We're all over the map.
Until then, I'm going to tell you all about how much I really enjoy God of War. It is. I like this game this much. A lot to the most.
Well,
it's on a scale. It's a really, really, really good game. So I'm gonna preface all of this. I had hoped to play a whole bunch of games this week. That was the plan. That plan was blown to hell literally when a windstorm came through and blew my fence apart, my gate apart, and a whole bunch of other things that I've been having to fix for the past week. So my time has been spent repairing, cleaning, and doing other things of that nature around the house, which has given me a whole hour a day at most to play God of War. However, spending that hour a day has been pretty fun. That game is super well polished. It's so well put together. The systems all make sense. I am not a huge fan of the fighting system itself because it does kind of fall into that there's a lot of options with what you can do. Click this button after you do this. To click this button, watch for this flashing thing. Do that. Yeah. So it's just a lot of that, and I have a mental gap. I have a mental break in there's only so much I can remember. It's almost like a fighting game thing, except for fighting games there's something clearer to me about it. I don't know.
God of War, typically, as different as this is, has been a game that is dealt in combos.
Yeah. I mean, it's still related to that. It's just instead of it being Devil May Cry with like extended swords, you're doing it with your axe and you're flipping between using your axe and using your fists, and then also don't forget you have your kid who can manifest things like wolves and foxes and birds and
Don't forget
Subway.
you have your kid. You and my wife now. Jeez.
Yeah, the worst. The boy whose name you might remember if you play the game, but if you're Kratos, you have no idea what his name is because 99% of the time you're just calling him boy. It's like Kratos watched a whole bunch of Phantasm and just couldn't get that out of his head and was like, I'm going to say that a lot. Boy. And there's another movie reference. Thursdays, book club for movies. The game, the game is really fun. Like it's building on itself. The story that they're using with, we talked about it last week, how it's a pretty by the numbers story in that dad's hiding from his past, mom has died, so now dad and son have to spend time together and do mom's last wish, which is to take her ashes to the tallest mountain, the highest peak or whatever. And then you find out as you're going along, the highest peak is not the mountain you're initially going for. It's in a whole different realm because all of this has to do with Norse mythology. So It's not in Midgard. It's in a totally it's in the fire giants realm. And so it becomes.
But you start in Midgard.
You start,
right?
You start in Midgard. You start on Earth.
Guard.
Right guard. And then you get to travel to the different like Niflheim and Jotunheim. And you find out the first guy that you fought that continues to tell you I can't feel anything. I'm nothing you're doing to me hurts me. You can't kill me. I'm here for as long as I want to be. You find out that was Balder. And Balder is dealing with Thor's sons, his two kids. And that you find out that the witch who helps you early on that lives in the woods is Freya. So they're getting into the Norse mythology heavily.
Which is my sister-in-law's name. So
your sister-in-law's a Norse god.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, any case,
the game just got more and less interesting at the same time. That's all I'm saying.
It is again. It is ridiculously beautiful at all times. That there's and fighting. There have been a couple of moments. There was at least one moment where you meet. You have to talk to the world serpent, which is this gargantuan snake. And when you do it, it was totally a moment where I went, wow, that was the scale that they give you for how small you are in comparison to this gigantic snake in the water is just so monumentally awesome. That's cool. And they do that with some of the bosses too, some of the other things that you end up fighting. You do end up fighting this giant snake thing, and it was a really cool battle against the snake. And some of the other bosses that you fight or not really even bosses, they're just enemies that are a little bit larger. You start facing trolls and stuff that are difficult, and they throw the trolls at you, and then they throw some of the other guys at you also, so you have to deal with the troll. And if you can work the system, the fight system well enough, you can beat the troll down enough to the point where you can ride the troll while he's thrashing around. He'll beat the crap out of the other dudes before you beat him to death with his own shoes. Yeah, man, it's really good. And this is totally the game. I would honestly say if get this game. Don't bother with God of War 1, 2, 3. This is seriously the game. It's got a great story. You actually get into the whole. I'm getting into the whole mythology of it, and there is some connection, as a parent to having a child, and there are some things where you they did a really good job of at times making Atreus a kid where he constantly. One of the things you tell him something, Kratos says something to him, and he goes, I know. And he says it all the time because every kid knows. It's and there are little hints like that say, he's still a kid. And even though dad was a god and mom may have been a demigod or whatever, he's going to be a demigod. He's going to be something more than he knows, but he's still a kid. And it's cool. It's really good.
So it pulls off the balance between, because I feel like the space that the character that the son serves in that story is also one of teacher to Kratos in a way,
Sure, definitely.
There's back and forth, but with a character like that, you run into, is it going to be too much for a kid to say? Like all
No,
of a sudden, the kid appears to know everything about life, and
really good. I'm glad you brought that up, because the way they do this is the way kids do it. So you are constantly there's like a whole Hellboy aspect to at least a chunk of this game, where one of the gods, I don't remember who he is there, because there are a lot of Norse names and it's a lot. One of the gods pissed Odin off, and Odin put him into a tree, like made him a part of the tree, and he has all of this
punishment.
He has all of this knowledge, and apparently Odin comes every day and tortures him, like finds ways to torture him, and he doesn't want to be there anymore. He can't leave the tree. His body is tied to the tree. So what do you have to do? Because you're Hellboy, you cut his head off. And then you have to go back to Freya, who brings him back to life, who brings the head back to life. So you're cruising around with this head in a backpack, basically. He's not even a backpack. He's just hanging off of Kratos' like belt.
It's a head pack.
Yeah, it's a head. It's a belt head.
You're putting things in him. You're like, I got these fruit snacks. I know where I can put them.
Open up. Hold my M&M. But when you so like he meets it comes to like he meets the witch in the woods. The head is there. The kid asks questions of all of the characters to understand why things are the way they are, or what they mean. And in doing so, it's that really, really smart way of him learning slowly and helping Kratos like connect a dot that may not have been there for him.
Brilliant. That's perfect.
And it's really well done. It's really
That's when
well
that
done.
works perfect, because it's I haven't played this game yet, but essentially that's when it's done right, that's when they ask the questions that make the adults answer something like, oh, well, it's for this convoluted reason that I've created over 30 years of my stupid, messed up life that's incorrect.
Yeah, and I mean...
you got it right because you don't understand all the garbage that I'm trying to...
Yeah, and I can't say that they, the dialogue is not necessarily going to be the greatest thing in the world, but that's the way they're aiming for. That's what they go for, and I think it's a really smart way of doing it. And the dialogue in the game itself is good. It is mostly good, and there's been some really great moments where you're kind of traveling around in a boat for a lot of time to get from like point A to point B. There's these kind of like little islands that are somewhat open, but they're not like super open world. They're contained portions. So you travel to them through these boats, and while you're in the boat, Atreus will ask you like, tell me a story, and Kratos tells him life lesson stories that are very much so. He tells them in a way that makes sense. Like he tells the story of the frog and the scorpion, and as the stories continue to get told, Atreus takes the lessons from them and applies them later on in dialogue. So I mean,
nice.
It's cool. I mean, you know that it's clear that those moments of dialogue or stories or whatever must be scripted in a certain, like, they come in an order, but it still works. Like, it feels natural,
When did you first hear the frog and the scorpion story?
Oh,
when and where?
Probably, I was probably 10 or 11, and I'm guessing it was probably in school from a teacher.
Oh, okay. It wasn't on MacGyver like me.
It was not on MacGyver. Did I miss the? Oh man, dang. I don't remember that.
Yeah, that's. I remember because that was one of those, like, when it was. I can't remember the supporting character's name either. You see him in literally everything. You'd recognize him in a heartbeat.
Yeah, the pilot guy.
Maybe.
Yeah, he's dead in real life.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Well, you know why?
Because he did. MacGyver left.
Frog, scorpion.
Yeah,
he was born. It was in my nature.
Yeah, that's it.
Anyways, MacGyver. Tuesdays at no, just kidding. Did they actually? They did remake that. Thursdays for Book Club for Movies. Did you play anything else this week?
I did. I played one other thing. I played the mobile version of Plague Inc. I had time and I've been doing that. It's fun. I like those games. It's like there's another game that I'm totally blanking on the name right now.
Pandemic.
That's it.
Really?
It's exactly it. Yeah. Same concept, basically, where you create a virus and you decide what the virus is and how what like what it's called and what it starts as, and then the game puts it somewhere, and you upgrade your virus by infecting the population, and you try to make it harder for the doctors to fix it. And it's all like text based, and I mean there's like a visual aspect to the map. You see the map getting more red.
You're playing from the point of view of the virus?
You are the virus, yeah.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Yeah. So you're upgrading yourself basically to become more hardy. Like you become more cold hardy.
Tom Hardy.
You become Tom Hardy. You it's good. It's fun. It's silly. You see the map growing more red, and the little news ticker goes by, and the news ticker gives you hints on what you need to like consider upgrading next. And your upgrades are kind of based on how many people you're infecting at a time, and eventually the idea is to infect the whole world and kill everybody. That's how you win.
Coming into view now. No,
I can tell you the 0 HP virus, did some damage.
Do you name it?
Oh yeah. You do.
Okay. It's not a bad name for a virus, actually.
No. It definitely took away people's hit points. we decimated something like 97% of the world, and they got like the cure like right at the end.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, I was a little peeved, but you know what?
That's in character too, actually.
Yeah, it totally is. Yeah. So outside of that, though, I nothing. No more games. That was.
That's interesting. Pandemic, I only know of because
of the board
somebody
game?
brought the board game to us. Yeah,
I love the board game. I think the board game is super cool.
It is. Is that the one too that did a version that you only play once? It takes like hours or days or something like that. But
I've never seen that. I mean, maybe somebody modded it, but I don't think that's that.
I feel like we walked by it at PAX one day. Anyways, yeah, it's a good board game. I have thought of picking up the app for that thing from time to time, but it's not. I don't like it as much as the people who showed it to me like it.
Sure, I would say check out Plague Inc. It's a little more. I don't know. It's cool, and it was like. I think it was $1.99.
Yeah, well, okay. Maybe when it goes on sale then.
Yeah, I mean, bring it down $1 because that's a little rough. But I'm sure it didn't cost nearly as much as whatever game you're going to bring up.
Solitairica.
Yes, welcome to Solitairica.
Which we've talked about. I'm still working through the DLC, which maybe I'm slow. But I figured out what the DLC is doing because it does have 4, and I'll finally tell you what they are since I just gloss over them every time because I think they don't really matter.
But they do.
But it's defense, attack, agility, and willpower are the 4 different things that you build up and then spend to use certain powers on and stuff like that. You have a bank of, I think it maxes out at 6 magic spells, each using one of those different meters. And it's essentially doing something related to that thing, like agility lets me select a card and then the cards around it will go in order, right? So I guess that's agile.
I like that. That's what agility is for a card game.
That's why I say like it doesn't really matter, but I'm sure it does to somebody somewhere. Like the person who created it, they're probably like, this is an agility power. And I'm like, it's still solitaire.
Yeah, exactly. And the publisher's like, whatever, just get the game finished already. Let's go, Chuckles. We don't have time for this.
Well, I figured out what the DLC is doing is that the decks, because it gives you 4 additional decks, and in the past, the base game gives you decks that use 2 different of those powers, and so there's each of the 4 decks combines or switches up those powers in different ways.
Yeah.
And the new DLC decks are only 1 power. So the Barbarian deck I talked about, it uses just attack. That's the one that took me forever. We talked about last time, because as you go through, you're earning a currency that you can use to buy upgrades that stick with your deck. So the more you play and fail, the more you buy upgrades that help you actually win.
Yeah. Okay.
So I finally did that with the Barbarian deck, got to the defense deck, all defense cards. So basically what it's doing is it's giving new abilities since it knows you can't build up kind of anything else. You get power also when you make the connections. Like if the deck deals me a 2 and I do ace, king, queen, like whatever color those cards were will add to my power, but I'm not getting anything from my deck. I'm just getting 1 from my deck. So it gives new abilities that are cool that haven't been in the game before that. So I'm starting to figure out now 3 decks in, because I sailed through on defense somehow. I don't know. You think that would have been harder if you could only defend?
I don't know. You're pretty defensive.
I guess. But now I'm on the agility deck, and that's a pain in everything. So
that would have been the perfect time for you to go, I don't think so. But no, all right, that's fine.
Like Raiden? Or
yes, Mortal Kombat, the Solitaire game. Let's move on. Keep going. No, don't worry about it. Nothing happened.
there's no keep going. That's all I got this week.
So-
I don't even have like a good excuse. Like, I mean, it is really windy around here, but it didn't destroy anything.
So something I found out, this is just only related tangentially to anything we've talked about, and it came up in my head while you were talking about the attributes and stuff for Solitairica. So I've been reading Bloodborne. They put out a comic for it, and the art is like fantastic, and it's like 3 issues in, and it's really cool. It's a really weird, like kind of a weird prequel about the hunt kind of thing. It's very odd. But one of the things that came up while I was reading that was they kind of like briefly mention one of the attributes that's in the game, this insight attribute. And the way it's described in the game, like everything in the game is kind of described in these very lore-ish ways. And it mostly makes sense. But insight was one that I just, for whatever reason, didn't click for me. I thought it had something to do with magic. And I found out that the more insight you have, the more you find out that there are monsters in places that you can't see until you have enough insight to see them. And at the very beginning, there's this big like clock tower. And the first time you play it, it's just this giant clock tower. There's nothing there. The second time you play it, you most likely have enough insight to see there is a giant friggin' monster on the clock tower. And it happens throughout the game where there's a whole bunch of stuff you just don't see if you don't have enough insight. And I thought, holy crap, that's really cool. Now I really want to go back and continue playing Bloodborne again.
I really haven't played Bloodborne yet, and I thought I had. Is basically what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
It
so
was
Bloodborne next week, I guess. Oh no, actually nothing next week.
No, there will be nothing ever again. There will be, but next week for sure there will not be anything. There will be no podcast next week. But let's not worry about that. Let's talk about some movies. Wait a second. No. This is, oh man, I just had a weird flashback to when I was in school. Oh, that's so bizarre. We were playing Jeopardy one time, and I was like, I knew the answer. I knew it. I knew the answer. And it was a game where we had to come and ring like we were standing up against somebody and we rung the bell. We had to grab the bell. And I knew the answer. And I'm like, I stood there and I knew it before she even finished the question. I rang the bell and I was, for whatever reason, my brain took a left turn. And the answer was it was somebody's name. And for whatever reason, no idea. And I remember this so clearly. And I said it just like this. I went, Fishy. And my teacher looked at me and everybody in the classroom just burst out laughing. And I was like, wait, no. And then like, so I just had one of those moments where like I was going to say, let's talk about something else. And then movies came out. Like, I assume I know why on this one because I'm looking at a thing that said movies.
Oh, I don't even.
Fishy. So, here we go. Great stuff.
This is a good show. This is good. Yeah, no, this is.
Yeah, no, this is great. I don't even know how to. I don't even know how to get into this at this point.
Yeah, there's no way to get into it. This is what happened this week is nothing. Apparently, I don't know if people are withholding or starting to withhold because E3 is getting close, or it's just, I don't know, slow news week. It happens.
It happens.
But you pitched me a thing that was actually quite interesting. It's ongoing, and maybe I'll let you take it from here. I don't know where you want to start necessarily with this.
Okay, so this is kind of there's a couple pieces to this, and so I guess we'll start with Steam Spy. So Steam, I'm sure most of you know, is Valve's video game. It's their distribution center. It's their platform. Sure. It's all their stuff. It's everything that Valve is. Steam Spy was a tool that was used to track ownership and game ownership and a couple of other attributes along with that and statistics using Steam's API. And it was something that was created separately by a developer named Sergey Galyankin.
But it's been important and useful because it's information that developers and publishers don't surface a lot of time, especially the bigger publishers who don't want to talk about what their game is selling or doing unless it's positive type thing, you know?
And then on top of that, the other thing that it allowed developers to do was if they were deciding on a genre or a particular look to a game, they could go and find games like that, see how they were selling, see whether or not what they were thinking was something that's in vogue, I guess, or en vogue, depending on...
It had curation aspects to it, whether purposeful or not. It was used for a lot of things by a lot of people.
And about like a week and a half ago, Steam Spy basically got shut down because Steam changed their API, not to do anything specific to Steam Spy. It was just they updated their API. A couple of days back, now we're talking like Friday or so, Sergey Galyankin, who again the developer, he said it's not dead. It's just kind of a little more basic and broken right now, and it's not necessarily 100% working as expected because the API changed. So he's
right, and the API changed to default hide information on Steam user accounts as opposed to all that stuff you talked about being public at the get-go. So
right. And so now the API is ostensibly useless to him. So he did reach out to Valve to see if they could keep going with his algorithms and whatnot, and you know, Valve being Valve doesn't respond. So,
or if they have responded, hasn't told anybody what they responded.
Yeah. So he's working on using some machine learning to try and figure out other ways of getting the data and getting the statistics, but what one of the impacts here that I think is super fascinating is kind of based off an article I read regarding Steam having a curation issue. It was written by Babak Abrashamshian.
We apologize.
Yeah, it was something on like Kotaku or it was somewhere on one of the Kinja sites. And the interesting thing about these two articles kind of coming together, these two situations coming together, the article and the Steam Spy thing, is that this article isn't wrong. Steam does have a curation problem, but I think it's not just Steam. I think this is an overall issue with any platforming for games, because what happens is indie developers want to make a game, they want to sell the game, and they want to make money off the game so that they can potentially make more games. That's, you know, the simple makes sense, right? Sure. Dotted line.
Right.
But when you are making a game, no matter how much quality you put into it, and it is surrounded by, compressed into, and then like inundated with like shovelware, it becomes a problem. It becomes really hard to find those games. And you know, you hear about indie developers. You hear about developers like Campo Santo. Campo Santo's indie. That's true. But they're also a bunch of fairly well-known developers from other companies that came together to put something together. So they had connections that were really easy to kind of reach out and say, hey, we're doing something. Maybe you want to look at it. You know, they had a step.
Yeah, however that went down.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but they have a step on a standard, you know, on an indie developer who's just on the outside. And if you're just on the outside, getting in is, you know, we already know that's really, really hard. But Steam isn't making it easier, especially with the fact that they've potentially made it easier to get a game out. You know, it's easier than ever to get a game on Steam and get it voted for and greenlit and potentially be put on Steam. And you see this happening with tons of games that are shovelware-y, you know, that are not necessarily great games. And then on top of that, you've got other publishers that have kind of that open access to dump their games onto Steam doing the same thing. And we saw earlier in the year, a company called Silicon Echoes had 173 games, and I guess this was last year actually, making up 10%.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a little
10% of all the games that were released in June and July of 2017, and you know, that was an extensive catalog of crap that Steam finally said, okay, we're not going to handle it anymore. They basically banned that developer.
Which is how you know how bad it was. Like
right.
Steam eventually was like, okay,
fine.
We do need to do something
they banned the
specific here,
and they pull all the games down. But what this all what my curiosity here is, and like kind of where all this comes down, or for me is how do you as a developer now, you have nothing to use statistics wise, really, no analytics that you can borrow from somebody to find out, how are these games doing, what's going on here, so that becomes an issue. The other thing is how do you get your game out there now? With Steam being so inundated with games and shovelware and just other stuff and other like literal garbage, if you can't afford to get out to PAX, you don't know the people to get your game in front of to review.
If you don't have the clout like a Campo Santo or something like that. I mean,
right.
In a lot of ways, this isn't about developers like them. Like Campo Santo's, especially now they're going to be okay. But even before that,
right.
People were talking about what they were going to do next because they knew who they were. They knew where they were coming from and stuff like that. And they did something good. I mean, and not that we're not talking about just good games here, but,
right.
Games that are innovative or different. What independent, and let's not define that right now,
sure.
Being indie, that's what that space is for, innovating, like stuff that is different, that even at first glance or first play might turn you off, like something like Papers, Please, which
good.
It was impossible not to garner some word of mouth there, but what if that got buried or was never played by anybody that played it for more than a couple minutes to understand what it's actually doing? It's not, because by all accounts, by many accounts, it's not a fun game to play necessarily.
Sure,
it's something you got to figure out. You got to put the time in to realize what they're actually doing there. So yeah, I mean, if indie games, the last thing they needed was one less tool to kind of put. Well, okay, yeah, one.
I don't know. The dude from Fez that made Fez
right.
is kind of a tool. It was fine. I mean,
Phil Fish.
Yeah.
Again with the fish. Anyways, yeah, and it's not a new problem. Like this curation thing is old. Like remember when we all got on Xbox's case about it forever from the 360 on.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a special bad case because you pay them money to get, featured, or they would have their Summer of Arcade where you'd have to be lucky to kind of get on there. I mean, it's curation on the one hand, like this is what it is. Somebody curates. And maybe that's where we go next with this, because this is where I think Valve has been a little reluctant. And this article makes a lot of good points. Like it talks about how a lot of these games are selling worse on Steam than they are on something like the Switch.
Sure.
Nintendo is very much into curation, both hardware and software. So
but Nintendo is also an interesting point here, because on both the Wii and the Wii U, they were also huge victims of shovelware. And by victims, I mean they allowed it. There was a ton of garbage that was available for purchase there. And I guess, like, ultimately part of the curation issue here is that before it was, and I'm not saying Greenlight shouldn't exist. I'm not saying people shouldn't be able to put games out. It's hard to create a gateway without gatekeeping in this realm, because you have a gateway of saying, here, just dump your stuff here and people can vote on it. It's really easy to manipulate votes. That's not hard. And it's not hard to get around people seeing that the votes are manipulated.
And that's what Greenlight was. Like, that's why that kind of failed. Like, Greenlight's gone now, right? That's not...
No, it's still there, I think.
Steam Greenlight, is it really?
Yeah,
who knows?
Actually, let's check it.
Or it changed significantly, or something like that. I feel like it's the.
Oh, they did close it, and it was Steam Direct.
Okay, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, so this is Valve though. Like, this article states that where's the trained staff is that Valve needs to understand a team of trained staff is going to be much more efficient in curating the platform than even the most advanced algorithm. The problem isn't that Valve doesn't understand that. Valve absolutely knows that. Everybody knows that. That's freaking basic. Like, no, I mean, as much as it would be rad, to have an algorithm do everything, bring on the AI. What could go wrong? At the very best, it's going to be an assistance. And for Valve, especially, a company that has no hierarchy, effectively, that has that weirdo work environment that you've all heard about in articles you can't believe. Like, a trained staff of curators is anathema to kind of what that company is. They would need a bunch of people that aren't just, these super talented developers that can wheel their desk over to any place they want and kind of, do their thing or not their thing or whatever. They would need none of the people that are there are going to be into that, is all I'm saying.
Sure.
They would have to hire a new workforce, essentially, and change the company culture to some extent, I would imagine.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how Valve fixes that. I mean, other than, hire people to do it. And I guess one of the things that it kind of goes back to is for games that are inundated like that, what sucks is that the curation is just not there, and your game is buried, and there is it's
bottom line.
And the hardest thing is that we're no longer at a point where games are kind of trickling in. Games are flooding in. So finding your game on accident is really, really difficult.
Steam is still growing. Like, it's not. In fact, that's the chart they share in this thing from the guy who did Steam Spy. It shows, the quote being, the indie engagement can't keep up with the growth.
Yeah, and I mean, and then on top of that, without forgetting the fact that you have AAA games and you've got AA games and you've got D batteries and who has D batteries, by the way. Nobody keeps them. You have to
I do, because I can't use them in anything. I got like a drawer full of like 8 because I bought like a 10-pack and used the 2 I needed.
Exactly. It's the same
and I've
thing.
had those for 10 years.
Like C batteries, the only thing they're good for is putting in a sock. But yeah, I mean, ultimately what this comes down to is that you have so many games coming in, and then the indie market is so flooded now that the only way curation works is to actually have curators, and the
imagine that.
And then the hard part about like the whole Steam curation thing in general, like following Total Biscuit or so and so, is that it's still the same issue, because they're only finding certain games, but they're not going nearly as deep as you could have in the past. And so there are games that are we all know this. There are games that are criminally underplayed and criminally underseen. Some that never get, the light of day because they're inundated. We're inundated with so much.
Yeah.
Maybe Valve does need to have a change of culture, and maybe they do need to hire some people to curate their sites, to curate a little deeper, and to actually go and clean out.
It's definitely not impossible. And I mean, play to your strengths, Valve. Like, what you have been good at, and we talked about this just last week, I think, right? With where they're good at engaging with their community and bringing people in. Yeah, because we talked about it with Campo Santo, like, and Turtle Rock and all that. Like, they bring in people that can add to their company. Like, there's a group of I feel like people that they could engage with to kind of help them in this area that, again, would take some more work, but it's not, if they're just invested in the algorithm being the solution eventually for everything, like, it's just not gonna happen.
No, not at all. And then the other portion of that final bit being, it ends, for me, this ends on a question, and it ends on the question that probably most indie companies are looking for, is how do these companies make themselves stand out in a sea of mediocrity, and how does Valve help that? Those are the questions that I walk away from this with, because I think ultimately I do think Valve has a play in that, not necessarily in making, and
should want that,
absolutely,
for the health of the industry, for the health of their business. Like, it's a win-win,
right? And that, I think, is... look at that. We pulled it off. 45 minutes.
Not bad.
Close it up.
we cut it back a little bit, or is it too late?
No, you can cut it back. We're done.
Okay.
I'm sure actually it'll be less than 45 minutes. I'm sure. I'm 100% certain that it will be less than 45 minutes today. That's
excellent.
Yeah.
Look at that.
You were gonna pull this thing
Efficient.
in 44:59.
I told you it was going to be efficient.
Okay, that's going to be the end of the show. If you got anything to say, let us know. Podcast at 0hitpoints.com. You can go ahead and hit us up at 0hitpoints, at the .com. You can hit us on Twitter, 0_H_B. We're on Instagram. I don't know what games are coming out next week. I don't think anything's coming out. I don't have money for it. I've got God of War. I've got Dead by Daylight. I've got BattleTech waiting for me still. So.
Oh, you're gonna dip?
Oh yeah.
There?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, I've pre-ordered BattleTech. BattleTech's sitting.
Okay.
It's waiting.
Been hearing a lot about it.
Yeah, huge fan. Jordan Weissman. Sorry, different Jordan. So many
Either
Jordans.
one.
Jordan
That's
Weissman.
fine.
Yeah,
No,
huge fan.
They don't care.
Like him. Shadowrun guy. Good stuff. Anything coming out this week that you're picking up?
No.
You planning on playing anything?
Nah. Also, no.
I will definitely have more God of War next week. That is for sure.
Because if I plan on it, that's when everything goes wrong.
The funny thing is, I don't mean next week. I mean 2 weeks from now, because next week there will be no Zero Hit Points episode. But 2 weeks from now, there will be God of War talk.
Yeah, what's happening? You're going somewhere?
I'm going to Texas for Texas Frightmare.
Right. Okay.
And if you want to hear more about that, I will talk about it on Book Club for Movies, both this week and 2 weeks from now.
Cool.
Until then, go back to older episodes and listen to us. We have dulcet tones that you just
not
can't.
too old.
Yeah,
we need to work out maybe the line where you should go. Like
I would say no later than like the 90th, no earlier than the 90th episode.
Oh, okay. I was thinking. Yeah. I mean, if you're hardcore, maybe like 60.
So wow.
Something.
Okay. 69, really? Maybe 69. It's a pretty nice episode.
Jokes.